A white and blue Ford concept car with sleek, futuristic lines rolled smoothly along a winding back road. The afternoon sun caught the metallic paint, making it shimmer like liquid mercury as it navigated the curves that led up into the hills overlooking the city. Behind the wheel sat a young lady with shoulder-length blonde hair and worried green eyes. Eyes that revealed uncertainty, like she was trying to figure out how to love someone who had changed in ways that no one had ever changed before. Anyone watching closely would notice something odd. There were long stretches where she wasn't actually steering, where her hands rested loosely on the wheel while the car seemed to drive itself with supernatural precision. The road wound higher up the small mountain, past several scenic overlooks with panoramic views of the sprawling city below. Finally, the car pulled into one of the more secluded parking areas and glided to a stop near the guardrail. She remained in the driver's seat, staring out at the beautiful expanse of urban landscape spread out beneath them. From up here, the city looked peaceful, normal. You couldn't see the pain or the secrets hidden in its streets.
Kristen, will you at least talk to me?
The voice that came through the speakers was achingly familiar, a human voice, but with a slight electronic undertone that reminded her constantly of what that human had become.
I'm sorry,
She paused, resting her forehead against one hand. Her engagement ring, a simple promise ring Patrick had given her for her 16th birthday, caught the light.
This is a lot to take in, Patrick. It's been 6 months and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
I know.
The voice carried the same disappointment and frustration she was feeling.
Kristen, I never wanted this. I was supposed to go to college, get a normal job, have a normal life. The Decepticons attacked our family, and if it wasn't for Perceptor...
His voice trailed off, heavy with the weight of impossible choices. She sighed and opened the door, stepping out into the crisp mountain air. The city sprawled below them, and somewhere down there Patrick's family was living their new reality while she struggled to figure out where she fit in it.
I'm not mad at you, Patrick.
She said, walking up to the guardrail and gripping it with both hands.
I could never be mad at you for surviving.
I'm Gear Jammer now,
The car said quietly. With a series of mechanical whirs and clicks, it began to transform. Metal panels shifted and reconfigured, wheels repositioning, the sleek sports car unfolding into a tall, relatively lean robot with blue and white armor. He moved with fluid grace despite his size, settling down with his legs dangling over the edge of the cliff like a teenager at their favorite thinking spot.
Gear Jammer.
Kristen repeated, testing the name on her tongue.
Something else I'm going to have to get used to. Do you still feel like Patrick when you're like this?
I don't know.
He admitted, leaning back on his elbows in a gesture that was so purely Patrick, it made her heart ache.
It can work, though. Look at it this way. You'll never have to ask your dad to borrow the car anymore.
Despite everything, Kristen smiled, sadly, but genuinely. She turned toward him and reached up to place her small human hand against his metallic cheek. The surface was warm, powered by whatever energy source kept him alive now.
I will always love you,
She said softly.
Does there have to be a but?
He asked, his optical sensors dimming slightly. Before either of them could continue the conversation they'd been having in various forms for 6 months, a massive explosion erupted in the distance. Near the center of the city below them, a fireball bloomed orange and black against the sky, followed by the delayed rumble of the blast.
What was that?
Kristen gasped, spinning toward the city. Even from this distance, they could see a massive cloud of smoke rising and debris falling like deadly rain.
I don't know.
Gear Jammer was already getting to his feet, his combat protocols automatically analyzing the explosion.
I had my comms turned off because I wanted to talk to you without interruption.
He activated his internal communication system.
Blaster, this is Gear Jammer. Are you guys...
Did you see that explosion? Blaster's voice cut him off, crackling with static and barely controlled panic.
Yeah, that's why I'm...
"We're right in the middle of it," Blaster shouted. "Get your tailpipe down here now, and Jazz might not throw you in the brig."
Right, I'm on my way.
"And Gear Jammer?" Blaster's voice was grim. "Bring your A-game. This ain't a drill." The connection cut off. Gear Jammer looked down at Kristen, torn between duty and the conversation they desperately needed to finish.
Go.
She said, stepping back.
People need you.
He transformed back into his sports car mode, and the closest door to her, the passenger door, opened. She jumped back into the passenger seat, and they tore off down the mountain road with a squeal of tires. Gear Jammer's engine roared as he pushed his systems to their limits, taking corners that would have been impossible for a normal car.
Patrick, Gear Jammer, whatever happens down there.
Kristen said, gripping the door handle as they flew down the winding road.
Remember that you're still the same person inside. You're still the guy who gave me his jacket at homecoming, who stayed up all night helping me study for calculus, who...
I remember,
he said softly.
I remember all of it.
They reached the outskirts of the city in record time, but as they got closer to Kristen's neighborhood, the sounds of battle became unmistakable. Energy weapons discharging, the screech of jet engines, explosions that rattled windows blocks away. Gear Jammer pulled up to the curb at the end of Kristen's block, his door opening immediately.
I'm sorry, but I have to drop you off here,
he said, urgency clear in his voice.
Decepticons are attacking. I'll contact you later, I promise.
Be careful,
she said, climbing out and stepping back onto the sidewalk. For a moment, she looked like any other teenage girl saying goodbye to her boyfriend. Except her boyfriend was a giant robot warrior heading into battle. Gear Jammer barely waited for her to clear his bumper before his tires screamed against the asphalt, leaving 50 yards of burned rubber as he accelerated toward the sound of combat.
Please be careful.
Kristen whispered to his disappearing taillights.
I do love you no matter what you've become.
The war zone that had been downtown was a hellscape of smoke, fire, and twisted metal. 5 aircraft that looked more like flying boats with flat keels than traditional jets screamed overhead, their forms alien and predatory. These were sweeps, Galvatron's elite hunter-killers, and their presence meant this was no random attack. But they weren't alone. From the opposite direction came the thunderous rumble of heavy ground vehicles. A massive military transport truck carrying a large missile array pulled to a stop using a pile of debris for cover.
Multiple Decepticon signatures have risen to street level,
Perceptor said. Over Loadout's comm, Perceptor's voice crackled. The damage had extended to his comm, and he prayed that they wouldn't fail. It was his only lifeline to the outside.
Wait,
Perceptor continued.
they're gone.
What do you mean, gone?
Jazz asked.
I don't know. As soon as they emerged from underground, they disappeared.
Blaster, what are you reading?
Clear skies all around, Blaster said.
Decepticon shield?
Loadout struggled out.
But if they're using a shield, that would mean they knew we were going to be here.
Jazz said.
It's a trap!
Loadout struggled out. Before anyone could respond or react, several rockets launched from the sweeps, trailing fire and smoke as they raced toward their targets. The missiles struck with surgical precision near Perceptor, and the scientist warrior barely had time to analyze the tactical pattern before the railroad overpass above him exploded and came crashing down on top of him like an avalanche. Tons of steel and stone crashing down with thunderous impact. When the dust cleared, there was no sign of Perceptor except for one blue hand sticking out from under the rubble. From street level, Onslaught's voice boomed across the battlefield as he transformed into his robot mode.
Autobots, your pathetic Earth sanctuary ends today. Surrender now, and we might let the meat creatures live.
The Combaticon leader was a walking fortress, massive, heavily armored, bristling with weapons. His shoulder-mounted artillery cannons swiveled to track an approaching ambulance. Without warning, a red, white, and blue race car began speeding around where the Autobots and humans were, a dense cloud pouring from its tailpipe, completely blocking off any visuals the sweeps might have.
We can't see them. They can't see us.
Smokescreen, the race car said.
Good thinking, Smokescreen.
Jazz said. Red Alert and Hound had driven far enough away and found a good spot to leave the victims of the bus accident and Nora.
Red Alert, you stay here and coordinate with the first responders.
Hound said as people began climbing out of him.
I gotta get in this fight.
What about me?
Nora asked.
My car is...
You stay here and help Red Alert.
Hound said and sped off, leaving her behind. She scowled up at Red Alert and then turned her attention to helping find places for people to sit. From his position on a nearby rooftop, Blaster transformed from his radio mode into his robot form. I got a visual on 5 sweeps, Blaster said over the comm, his voice tight with concentration.
Keep us informed of what you see. I'm going to free Perceptor.
Jazz said, transforming into his car mode and speeding towards the trapped Perceptor. Blaster's chest plate vibrated, and he chuckled. Don't worry, there's enough for all of you to get some, he said and pressed the eject button on his torso. Immediately, 4 large cassette tapes sprang out of his chest and transformed. 2 of them, Rewind and Eject, transformed into humanoid-looking bots. The other 2, Ramhorn and Steeljaw, transformed into a rhinoceros and a large lion, respectively.
Let me at him.
Rewind hollered, hoisting his carbine and letting fly with a volley of energy blasts towards a sweep. But the sweeps had spotted them as well. 2 rockets launched simultaneously from different positions, a coordinated crossfire pattern designed to eliminate his cover options. Blaster threw himself sideways, but the missile struck the rooftop where he'd been standing. Scatter! Blaster shouted to the tapes that had just exited his chest. All 4 of them leapt off the roof. 3 of them made it to the roof of a neighboring building, but Ramhorn wasn't able to build up enough speed, and he plummeted to the ground below. Fortunately, his fall was broken by a vehicle that was parked on the street. The car was instantly crushed into unrecognizable pieces when Ramhorn slammed down onto it.
Ow!
He grunted and lay there for a minute, dazed, before he groaned and started trying to stand up. Blaster wasn't as lucky. The explosion shattered the building's structure, and Blaster fell, disappearing into the collapsing interior with a crash of breaking concrete and twisted rebar. He wasn't injured. However, he was fully stuck, trapped inside the building he was just standing on.
Where's Gear Jammer?
Jazz shouted. So far, 4 of his number were out of the fight, and the battle hadn't even begun. Blaster, Loadout, and Perceptor were trapped under tons of concrete, and Red Alert was busy helping humans. She was a healer. He couldn't get mad at her for doing what she's supposed to. That left Hound, Smokescreen, Trax, Wheelie, and the 4 tapes, Eject, Rewind, Steeljaw, and Ramhorn. Gear Jammer was still en route. That would have to do. Jazz couldn't let more humans get hurt. He was almost to the collapsed overpass where Perceptor was buried, but suddenly his path was blocked as a space shuttle flew in, transformed, and landed right in front of him. Going somewhere, Autobot? Blastoff sneered and opened fire. Jazz had to dive and roll as blaster bolts exploded all around him. His tactical computer was already calculating how long it would take to free Perceptor while under fire, and the numbers weren't encouraging. Somewhere, blaster bolts flew across the devastation towards Blastoff. One of them glanced off his arm, and he jumped behind a building for cover.
You're clear, Jazz.
Trax shouted.
I got this one, you free Perceptor.
Thank you, Trax.
Jazz said. He dove and transformed into his Porsche and sped off. Every second counted. 2 of his number were trapped underneath heavy objects. There was no telling how much damage either of their internal systems could sustain before critical failures began cascading. Meanwhile, buried under tons of concrete and steel, Loadout was fighting his own battle. The two children huddled beneath him, a boy of maybe 7 clutching a stuffed dinosaur, and a girl of 9 carrying a pink backpack. Both were covered in dust.
Are you guys okay?
Loadout asked, though his voice was strained from the enormous weight pressing down on his frame. Warning lights flashed across his HUD as structural stress reached dangerous levels. Both children nodded, too scared to speak at first.
Are you an Autobot?
The boy finally asked, his voice small but brave.
Yeah.
Loadout answered, forcing what he hoped was a reassuring smile into his voice.
And Autobots always protect people. I'm going to get you guys back to your parents.
Loadout tried to shift his weight, to lift the building enough to create an escape route, but his damaged systems couldn't generate enough power. Servo motors whined in protest, and several warning alarms chimed in his auditory processors.
Loadout here,
he said over the comm.
Any news on extraction?
No can do, big guy. Blaster's voice came back, echoing strangely. I'm trying to find my way out of a building myself.
I'm digging Perceptor out from under this bridge, and everyone else is fighting Decepticons.
Jazz replied, his voice punctuated by the sound of falling debris.
You'll both have to blast your way out.
That's a negative, Jazz,
Loadout said, and coughed. A tiny stream of glowing green fluid dripped out of the corner of his mouth.
I've got friendlies in my position. Any explosions will compromise their safety.
I'm sorry, Loadout.
Red Alert's voice carried clear disappointment and frustration.
I'm trying to coordinate civilian evacuation. The first responders are still en route, but they can't get through the combat zone.
Loadout sighed, a mechanical sound that somehow conveyed very human exasperation.
Wheelie?
He called out, his voice taking on a distinctly deadpan tone.
Wheelie runs to save Loadout from his building grave,
came the enthusiastic reply. The sound of weapons fire stopped from Wheelie's position, followed by the familiar transformation sequence.
Wheelie small, but Wheelie strong. This won't take very long.
Wheelie's sing-song voice was a sharp contrast to the devastation of the battle going on around them. An orange Toyota Prius, somehow the least intimidating vehicle imaginable for a warrior robot, peeled away from the battle and raced toward Loadout's position, weaving between chunks of debris and dodging the occasional energy blast. If Loadout had been capable of rolling his eyes, he would have.
Just hurry, Wheelie,
he said. Overhead, the sweeps made another attack run. Energy blasts erupted from their weapons, lighting up the smoke-filled air. One blast hit the edge of the collapsed building, and Loadout groaned in pain as the additional weight shifted onto his already strained frame.
That hurt,
he groaned.
Please don't fall,
the little girl whispered, clutching her brother tighter.
Don't worry, Princess,
Loadout said, pouring every ounce of reassurance he could into his voice.
You'll be going home to your family in a few minutes, I promise.
Wheelie reached the collapsed building and immediately began his rescue operation. Despite his small size, his mechanical strength allowed him to move chunks of concrete that would have taken a human construction crew hours to clear.
Do not fear, Wheelie's here,
he announced cheerfully, grabbing a steel beam and tossing it aside like it weighed nothing. Another rocket screamed down from above, this one targeted at Jazz's position. The Autobot leader was forced to abandon his efforts to free Perceptor, diving away from the overpass as the missile exploded nearby.
Sorry, Perceptor,
Jazz called out.
I'll be back as soon as I can.
Don't worry about me,
came the muffled reply from under the rubble.
I'm stable for now. Stop those Decepticons before they level the entire district.
Jazz straightened up and quickly drew his photon rifle, tracking an incoming rocket and shooting it out of the sky in a brilliant explosion. Without missing a beat, he transformed back into his Porsche mode and sped off toward the source of the missile attacks. He didn't get far. Two of the sweeps came screaming out of the smoke in formation, transforming in mid-flight and landing heavily on the road directly in front of and behind him. The Decepticons' purple and gray armor gleamed with malevolent energy as their red optical sensors fixed on Jazz.
Target acquired,
the lead sweep announced. His voice was odd. Jazz couldn't place it, but the voice seemed to be more robotic, if that made any sense. 3 other sweeps had also spotted opportunities. They swooped down behind Wheelie's position, transforming and landing with earth-shaking impacts. The little Autobot was completely focused on his rescue operation, moving debris with single-minded determination.
Target acquired,
one of the sweeps said, but instead of pointing his gun at the diminutive bot, he and his 2 colleagues pointed something that looked like grappling hook shooters. Wheelie heard the sound of charging weapons and looked over his shoulder, his optical sensors widening as he realized his danger. But these weren't the killing shots he expected.
Wheelie Peak, you're no sneak,
he said, cartwheeling away just as 3 stun bolts seared through the air where he'd been standing. The missed shots struck the collapsed building instead, sending electrical feedback through the metal framework. The resulting power surge caused emergency lighting to flicker throughout the debris pile, causing some of the large pieces of wall to slide off. Loadout grunted as his systems experienced momentary interference.
As you can see, you helped Wheelie.
The little Autobot called out to his attackers with characteristic cheer, even as he dodged another volley of stun bolts. But more Decepticons were joining the fight. From street level, the sound of heavy machinery approached. Another Combaticon, Brawl, in his tank mode, came rumbling around the corner, his main cannon swiveling to target the trapped loadout.
Found the big one.
Brawl's voice boomed across the battlefield.
He's stuck like a bug under a rock.
The sweeps took aim again, but before they could fire, the building they were standing next to suddenly exploded outward. Blaster came shooting out of the structure like a cannonball. He hit the ground in a perfect combat roll, coming up in a firing stance with his rifle locked onto the nearest sweep. His blast caught the Decepticon in the chest, spinning the enemy around and spoiling his aim. The second sweep reacted quickly, leaping into the air and transforming back into his jet mode. His rapid-fire plasma cannons lit up the area where Blaster was positioned, forcing the Autobot to dive for cover behind the overturned bus. His reprieve was short-lived, however, because another sweep hit the bus with a well-placed shot, and Blaster was out in the open again, surrounded by Decepticons. One of the sweeps that had stayed in robot mode advanced on Wheelie's position with his stun weapon raised.
Surrender, small unit. Resistance is futile.
The sweep's voice didn't sound right, like it was purely mechanical. Perceptor's analytical mind heard the sweep's odd voice and put extra effort on identifying it. He couldn't help it. That's what he does. "This is getting intense!" Blaster called out, returning fire. "We're outnumbered 3-1. Where's our backup?" There was a metallic roar as Ramhorn charged through the smoke and slammed into the sweep that had been tracking Wheelie, knocking him over. Ramhorn slid to a stop and turned around, glaring at the sweep and pawing at the ground. From his position under the building, Loadout ran another self-diagnostic scan and frowned at what he saw.
Jazz!
Loadout struggled out over the comm.
We've got bigger problems than I thought. These kids need evac now.
Just hang on, Loadout,
Jazz replied grimly.
We're doing our best.
As if in answer to his question, the distinctive sound of a high-performance engine echoed through the battle zone. Gear Jammer came screaming around a corner in his sports car mode, his tires smoking as he took the turn at impossible speed. He transformed in mid-skid, his sleek form unfolding into robot mode as he landed in a combat stance next to a pile of concrete and steel that used to be a train bridge. His optical sensors quickly scanned the battlefield, taking in the tactical situation with the speed and precision of a trained strategist.
Sorry I'm late to the party,
Gearjammer announced, already training his rifle on the first sweep he saw.
Traffic was murder.
Shut up and shoot something! Blaster shouted through the comm.
Gearjammer, get Perceptor out from under that bridge,
Jazz shouted. Before Gearjammer could fire, he saw movement nearby and glanced to the side. A blue hand was sticking out from between pieces of concrete and steel beams.
Perceptor?
Gearjammer asked. As an answer, the blue hand simply waved at him.
Hang on, I gotcha,
Gearjammer said, putting his rifle away and running over to dig his colleague out. Wheelie, meanwhile, had pulled out his slingshot and loaded an energon pellet into it. The weapon looked almost comically primitive compared to the high-tech arsenal around him, but Wheelie wielded it with deadly accuracy. He drew back the sling and let fly. The energon pellet struck the same sweep. Ramhorn was charging. Ramhorn struck the sweep in the legs at the same time that Wheelie's energon pellet struck the sweep's shoulder, exploding in a brilliant flash of blue-white energy. The Decepticon spun silently through an entire airborne somersault and crashed to the ground without making a sound. Ramhorn ran in a tight circle and charged back, trampling the sweep into the ground. Wheelie was about to say something, but Brawl had rounded a debris pile, his massive cannon now aimed directly at the trapped loadout and the children beneath him. The fact that Wheelie was directly in between was no bother to Brawl.
Say goodbye, Autobot,
Brawl rumbled, his main gun beginning its firing sequence. Mirage suddenly appeared out of nowhere. He'd been there, but invisible, waiting for the perfect moment. There wasn't much he could do against a tank, but he didn't need to do much. He took aim from point-blank range and opened fire at the turret of the tank. The energy blasts, while they didn't cause much damage, they did cause the barrel to move slightly, which messed up Brawl's shot. Brawl fired, but the projectile veered off course and exploded behind where loadout was trapped. The explosion removed several tons of concrete and steel and left a hole where more of the building slid off of loadout's back. Loadout felt the tonnage pressing down on him lessen. He looked around, trying to see if there was any light peeking through.
Whatever just happened?
Loadout said with a cough.
Do it again.
In the distance, the sound of sirens grew louder as the first emergency vehicles finally managed to navigate through the chaos. Red Alert spotted an ambulance crew and waved them over to her location.
There are lots of wounded here,
she told the paramedics when they arrived.
But this isn't the best place to treat them while we're still under attack. I think the best way I can help you is to draw enemy fire away from your position so you can work.
Any help we can get is appreciated, the lead medic replied, already moving toward the nearest group of injured civilians. Good luck out there.
Thanks,
Red Alert said.
Good luck to you too.
She transformed into her white Lamborghini mode, the red caduceus on her hood gleaming, and sped away from the growing crowd of first responders. Her job now was to be a target, to make herself visible and draw Decepticon attention away from the vulnerable humans. Next time we're up for contract negotiations, one first responder said to his partner as they watched the Lamborghini speed off. I'm asking the city for one of those. The robot or the Lambo? The other asked. Both.
Jazz, I'm moving to assist loadout.
Red Alert reported over the comm.
Negative,
Jazz replied, his voice strained as he grappled hand-to-hand with the sweep blocking his path.
Wheelie's got the extraction handled, and you're closer to Perceptor's position. You help Gearjammer extract Perceptor. He's been under that rubble too long.
But Wheelie's also got 2 sweeps trying to kill him.
Go!
Jazz ordered, using the sweep's own momentum to flip the Decepticon over his shoulder.
That's a direct order.
Red Alert spun around reluctantly and headed toward Perceptor's position, her medical protocols screaming that every second counted. Gear Jammer was already there, but his attention was being divided between freeing Perceptor and shooting at Decepticons.
You cover me, I'll dig out Perceptor.
Red Alert said, screeching to a stop and transforming next to Gear Jammer.
Absolutely,
Gear Jammer said, relieved that he could focus on one thing. Back at Loadout's position, the battle was intensifying rapidly. Brawl had transformed into his robot mode and was searching for Mirage, who had turned back invisible. Several more rockets rained down from the remaining airborne sweeps, forcing Wheelie to again abandon his rescue work and dive for cover. Ramhorn ran around almost aimlessly, desperately searching for something to smash.
Where'd they go?
Ramhorn snorted. He pawed at the ground and whipped his head from side to side.
The building went crash. Ramhorn go smash.
Wheelie said, pointing to where he'd been trying to free Loadout. Ramhorn snorted and charged straight at the pile of debris, slamming into it with all his might. He bounced off and flew several yards in a random direction, but shook it off and prepared for another charge. Ramhorn's charge, plus the explosions from the battle, sent more debris cascading down onto the already unstable pile, and new cracks appeared in the concrete, pressing down on Loadout's frame. When the smoke cleared, 2 of the sweeps, including the one with the damaged weapon systems, had moved in close. As Wheelie tried to get back to his rescue work, the lead sweep's arm shot out and grabbed the little Autobot around the torso.
Target acquired,
the sweep said in that strange monotone, his grip tightening like a vice.
Oh no, let Wheelie go.
The little Autobot gasped, struggling against his captor's hold.
Hold him still,
the other sweep said. This one's voice was different than the others. Where the other sweeps all had a rather monotone voice, this one was both higher in pitch and more expressive, almost like he was about to let out with an evil cackle. Ramhorn was about to charge the downed building again, but the call from Wheelie caught his attention. He turned around to see that, far behind him, Brawl had dismissed Mirage and was creeping closer. He pawed at the ground and snorted an angry challenge. Then he was off, charging Brawl, but first he made a slight detour through the 2 sweeps who had captured Wheelie. The sweep with the malevolent voice saw the charging Ramhorn and jumped out of the way, but the other sweep had his back turned and was bowled over as Ramhorn plowed through. Ramhorn didn't stop and plowed into Brawl just as he was taking aim on the fallen bridge where Perceptor, Red Alert, and Gear Jammer were fighting. He poured on a burst of speed and slammed into Brawl with such force that the tank was flipped entirely onto its top. Brawl took a minute to recover from the sudden crash, but when he did, he was enraged to find the small Autobot literally jumping up and down on him as he lay there. With a shout of rage, Brawl transformed into his robot form and swung his leg around, kicking Ramhorn off of him. Only then could he stand up. Smokescreen had deployed his signature defensive screens, creating a wall of electromagnetic interference that confused the sweep's targeting systems.
That's right, come get some,
he called out, drawing their fire away from the ambulances that were just arriving on scene. Trax was drawing fire away from the humans by firing a few shots in their general direction, and then speeding through the debris field in his Corvette mode. But at one point, he'd brushed up against a downed tree and had gotten mud on his rear fender.
A little dignity, please,
he shouted at the sweep.
I'm going to have to go through a car wash on the way back home.
Mirage, freed from fighting Brawl, was helping protect the humans as well. He flickered in and out of visibility, his cloaking field allowing him to move unseen through the chaos. He appeared next to a group of paramedics trying to reach injured civilians, his weapons raised to provide cover.
Keep moving,
he said calmly.
I've got your back.
Amazed shouts of, "Where did he come from?" could be heard by several humans. A sweep dove toward them, weapons blazing. Mirage's electro-disruptor caught it mid-flight, sending the Decepticon spinning out of control to crash into an already damaged building. Hound had transformed, using his holographic projectors to create phantom Autobots that drew Decepticon fire.
Over here. No, over here.
Multiple images of him taunted the enemy, buying time for real Autobots to maneuver. Jazz was pinned down by 2 sweeps and Onslaught's artillery. Blaster was trading shots with airborne enemies. Gearjammer was covering Red Alert, who was busy freeing Perceptor. Trax, Hound, and the other 3 cassettes were all fighting. Wheelie transformed into his car mode and sped away from the sweeps, which was towards the building where Loadout had been buried.
Get up!
The malevolent sweep shouted at the other sweep. The sweep got up, and both of them took aim in the direction of Wheelie.
Wheelie, get out of there!
Jazz's voice cut across the comm. The 2 sweeps opened fire simultaneously. The barrage of plasma bolts struck with devastating accuracy. Wheelie tried to dodge, his small frame moving with surprising agility, but there were too many shots, too concentrated. The first bolt caught him in the rear quarter panel, spinning him around. Wheelie transformed back into his robot mode, thinking that legs would work better than wheels over the debris. He would have been correct had there not been so much shooting. He got hit a second time in the shoulder, which spun him around. The third hit his chest. The 4th, 5th, and 6th tore through his midsection.
Wheelie!
Red Alert's scream cut through the comm chatter. But the same barrage that killed Wheelie had another effect. The concentrated weapons fire blasted away massive chunks of the debris pile, vaporizing concrete and severing structural supports that had been pressing down on Loadout's back. Loadout felt the weight shift, felt the pressure decrease as tons of rubble was simply eliminated by the Decepticon attack. With a roar that was equal parts rage and determination, Loadout surged upward. The remaining debris cascaded off his back like an avalanche. Concrete blocks the size of cars tumbled down behind him and raising another dust cloud. The 2 children scrambled out from beneath him, running away from the fighting as fast as they could. Loadout stood to his full height, 30 feet of damaged but functional Autobot, energon leaking from a dozen fractures in his armor. His left shoulder was locked up, his right leg was barely functional, and his HUD was filled with damage warnings. But the most devastating weapon in his arsenal, his mind, was still online. The malevolent sweep had advanced on Wheelie and was focused on the small orange body lying in the rubble. His hands were extending toward Wheelie's head, interface cables deploying to connect to the fallen Autobot. Some connected to his head, some to his chest. The other sweep charged Loadout, pulling a green glowing energon knife as he ran. Loadout didn't think. He didn't calculate trajectory or assess tactical odds. He did what he was trained to do. He attacked. His right arm came up despite the damaged actuators screaming in protest, but he managed to block the knife swing. His other fist fired in a hit to one side of his center mass. The sweep was knocked back by the force of the punch, but he spun in a quick circle and knocked Loadout's hand away. He tried to bring his other hand up to block, but it was almost frozen in place from all the damage he'd already taken, and the sweep slammed his energon blade into Loadout's side. Loadout roared in pain, but a simple thing like pain wasn't going to stop him. When he was a Marine, Loadout learned the importance of having a backup weapon, a sidearm. If he was going to use it, now was the time. He pulled his large sidearm from its holster, concealed behind an armor plate in the small of his back, and shot the sweep 3 times, twice in the chest and once in the head. While the sweep was still falling, Loadout fired several more times at the malevolent sweep. His own systems, taxed beyond what normal systems were designed to take, began shutting down. Loadout fell to one knee, but still he fired at the sweep who had been handling Wheelie's body.
Wait,
The sweep yelled in a high-pitched, raspy panic as bolt after bolt slammed into and even broke through the sweep's body. The sweep's optics flared bright, then began to dim. Loadout's sidearm clicked. It was empty, and he dropped it so he could support himself with his still operable hand. But as Loadout braced his good hand on the ground to stand up, he saw something, a shimmer in the air, a ghostly form that seemed to pull away from the destroyed sweep's body. It was vaguely humanoid, translucent, and looked like it had a different color scheme than the sweep. Where the sweeps were mostly purple, this one was red and gray. Then it was gone, dissipated into the smoke and dust of the battlefield. Loadout swayed and stared at the space where the apparition had been, but he wasn't really looking at anything. His fuel lines were ruptured. His energon reserves were at critical lows. His vision was starting to blur. He looked down at Wheelie's body. The little Autobot who'd been so cheerful, so eager to help, who'd given his life trying to free Loadout from the rubble.
I'm sorry,
Loadout whispered. His other leg gave out. He toppled forward, falling like a tree. He barely registered the ground rushing up to meet him, barely heard someone calling his name. Not just his name, Loadout, but also his title, the title he truly cherished more than any other in this life. Dad. Then Red Alert was there, her hands catching him, attempting to support his weight with strength that shouldn't have been possible from her smaller frame. That's when he felt 4 hands holding him and heard his son's voice.
Dad!
Gearjammer was saying.
It's all right, we got you.
Red Alert's medical scanners were already running over his damaged systems, her repair protocols activating.
Don't you dare go offline on me.
She said, her voice tight with emotion.
Not after all that.
Wheelie,
Loadout managed.
I know.
Red Alert said quietly.
I know. But right now, I need you to stay with me. Can you do that?
Loadout's systems were shutting down non-essential functions, trying to preserve what little energon remained. His vision tunneled, darkened at the edges.
The kids,
he mumbled.
The 2 kids.
They're safe.
Red Alert assured him.
You saved them. You saved everyone. Now, let me save you.
The last thing Loadout registered before his consciousness faded was the sound of...
Decepticons, fall back.
Almost as quickly as they'd appeared, the remaining Decepticons flew away, leaving the Autobots to clean up the mess they'd just made.